for Owen Sound.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, look, I just want to thank my honourable colleague for just laying out just how deep this corruption is and just how, implicated even the current minister is. But I'd like him to explain, because I think he understands some even more of the historical context of how far back this goes to even the former Minister of Industry, Navdeep Bains, and how the PCO and PMO were warned about these potential conflicts. And if he could explain to Canadians just how far back this goes and how deep this corruption is with the current Liberal government.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, the Harper government cleaned this up, put in a new chair, Jim Basile, hired a new CEO. It got a clean bill of health from the Auditor General and Treasury Board in 2017. Then the chair, Jim Balsillie, started to criticize this government in public on their lack of action on the surveillance economy. Guess what Navdeep Bains did? He said he's got to go because he won't shut up about criticizing the government. Tossed him out, put in a chair that they were told repeatedly by SDTC should not be in it because she's the first conflicted chair in the history of SDTC, including the former PMO staffer who did communications and was in SDTC, phoned her colleagues in the minister's office in PMO and said this person's conflicted. And guess what? Former Minister Navdeep Bains said, that's, by the way, the guy in charge of the highest cell phone rates in the world at Rogers now. Former Minister Navdeep Bains said, we'll manage the conflict. They sure managed the conflict. They sure managed it with $390 million of taxpayer money going to conflicted directors.
Très brève question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, I just want to take some of the testimony from one of the SDTC employees who said at committee, I think, quote, I think that the current government is more interested in protecting themselves and protecting the situation being a public nightmare, and that they would rather protect wrongdoers and financial mismanagement than have to deal with a situation like this at SDTC and in the public sphere. Could my colleague just elaborate on that testimony?
L'honorable député a 45 secondes pour répondre.
Well, thank you very much, and the member is quite right, and I highlighted the whistleblower's testimony in my speech. Not only did the whistleblower say that, the whistleblower said the minister acted corruptly and deceptively, and that the minister was more interested in damage control. It demonstrates that this government and this minister were complicit in the corruption at SDTC, and the minister is wholly unfit to serve in the role that he carries as minister.
Merci, le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for underscoring the importance of this question of privilege with respect to conflicts of interest. I also like him to explain why transparency is so important to reestablish the public's confidence in the use of limited Canadian money. The honourable member for Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague, and I'd like to congratulate him for his French. I didn't even know he spoke French. It's good news. We have another Francophone here in the House of Commons. Great news. And the Bloc will be happy about this. Another Francophone. Well, it's a very simple question. Yes, we do have privileges once again here in the House of Commons. And we are here, well, as my Bloc said earlier, he was a law professor for 30 years. We talked about ethics. The first role of a parliamentarian is to ensure that the country is properly governed. And this includes to knowing how public finances are spent. And this is a key priority of the opposition. That's our role. We have to make sure that the government is doing their work and gives us their information with all transparency. And I use air quotes here because obviously this government doesn't really know what the definition of transparency is.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I got a comment real quick from my honourable colleague, because it was kind of rich, I thought, with the parliamentary secretary talking about filibustering when he's been up speaking on this very same motion and taking up time in the debate. But my question to the member from Selkirk Interlake Eastman is that I talked to my father, so many Canadians that are so worried about this lack of transparency, this waste of taxpayers' dollars, and they just want to know where their money is, and that they're so tired of the corruption with the current government. And I'd like the member just to comment on how important it is to restore trust in our democratic institutions, in our government, and the importance of that. And by covering things up, this government is continuing to tear down our democratic institutions.
The Honourable Member for Southwark Interlake Easton.
Madam Speaker, I thank my friend from Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound for his question. And, you know, even the Deputy Minister of Industry is also saying that this money that was taken potentially criminally, but illegitimately, by the Liberal insiders at SDTC should be paid back. We haven't heard that from the Liberals at all. You know, and on the issue of transparency, the Liberals, if they want to be transparent, they could turn those documents over today. But no, they would rather sit here. And as you mentioned, you know, the Liberal member from Winnipeg North, who has spoken more words in this chamber than all the rest of us combined, is the biggest person that filibusters in this place. And, you know, as I've said, he has the gift for the gab, but nobody has spoken so much but has said so little.